Hello. It is a lovely evening here. I'm sitting in my balcony right now, and you can see the mist in the atmosphere. It is beautiful, but it is freezing. It is literally freezing. In fact, I was going to go out to shoot a vlog, but I decided to stay home, sit in front of the camera, and talk about my journey with understanding fast speech. As you might know, that I am not a native speaker of the language either. So I've had my own journey, my share of challenges, ups and downs. So my journey wasn't as easy as some of you might think at this point. I was just looking back at it and I was wondering, how did I come to a point where I'm able to understand everybody easily? Because that was not my start. I started listening to this guy's song. He makes remix, right? So Hindi songs with English lyrics. And he has a very native style accent, even though his accent's more colorful than that, because I remember he's also a Sri Lankan and he can speak Hindi as well, right? But I couldn't understand his accent. I loved his songs at that time, urgent songs. So I would listen to them, but I always had to read the lyrics. That was my start. And I'm talking about, when I was 10 years old or something like that, like 5th grade, 6th grade, around that time, yeah? Then I started listening to more content in English because my English teacher recommended that I listen to English commentary while watching cricket matches. For example, while watching an IPL match, focus on the English commentary. And my question the entire time was that, why am I able to understand some types of English and why not every type of English that exists out there? I guess I didn't even know the word accent at that time. If somebody said it to me, I would have gauged the meaning from the context, but I did not know the word like standalone. Do you know what I mean? I understood my English teacher. I understood my dad when he spoke in English. I understood the celebrities on TV. I even understood English commentary to a great extent, but I wasn't able to understand this native style English, right? American speaking in English. Then came the time when I made some American friends. Now that bit is a bit odd. Yeah, that is slightly odd because not everybody has had the same opportunities as I have. That's why it's slightly odd, and I want to take it off from my journey entirely because it's not something that you can replicate at this time. Also, that part of my journey hasn't had a big effect on the fact that I'm able to understand every type of English at this point. It requires individual effort, pure individual effort. So, taking that out, I started listening to English songs and watching some shows. And again, I had a lot of difficulty understanding these songs. Even today, I'm not gonna lie. If you play me an Eminem rap or song, I would be perplexed, right? Because it's not easy. If you play me Travis Scott, I'll probably be able to guess like 8 out of 10 words that he's saying because I'm used to listening to Travis Scott at this point. And I'm not used to listening to Eminem. I have never been. That is the number one point. I started watching shows, listening to podcasts in English, and listening to songs, all in one accent, the American accent. And again, going back a little bit, when I listened to the English commentary in the Australian accent, it was equally as maddening for me as any of these accents at the start. I wouldn't understand like a full sentence in the Australian accent. They had such a thick accent. They would say, to not, ply the game. Obviously, I'm not doing a great impression, but that is not the point. I wouldn't understand that English. And I thought like, okay, there's too many types of English in the world. And then suddenly I started to understand this one type of English, which was actually the American accent. Now I can tell. It was the American accent. So the first thing that I did in order to understand fast speech, to get myself started, was to be consistent with my listening practice. I listened and listened and listened. And yes, I did not stop using closed captions like subtitles for the first few years, I think. For the first 1 or 2 years, I did not stop using the CC option. And if you're right now using the subtitles, and if you feel the need to use the subtitles to understand everything that's being talked about in a video or show, don't feel bad about it, because that is literally part of the process. That is literally how you get started. And I got started the same way. At the start, it wasn't concerning. I read the lyrics. I watched the videos with subtitles, and that was like, okay, I don't care. But after some time, it started to come to me as a question: for how long will I be watching these videos with subtitles, right? Because I wanted to be an independent communicator who's able to understand accents and respond accordingly. So when that question started coming to mind, I did one thing that I have not found a lot of people talking about. Some people do talk about it, but most people do not talk about it. I started focusing on the speaker's expressions and mouth movements. I've done that a lot. And I've told you this one thing, that I've been listening to the Joe Rogan podcast for quite some time. I think it is 10 years old, maybe like more than 10 years old. And that was the time around which I started learning English. I started focusing on the language too, you know what I'm saying? So in a way, we are connected, right? Our journeys are kind of connected. So I would listen to these podcast episodes with the subtitles on, but I would also focus on the speaker's mouth movements a lot. And at first, it might feel like it's useless, it's worthless. What the hell am I doing? Why am I staring at someone's lips? Yeah. But I did not do it as form of someone else's instruction. Nobody asked me to do it. I did it as a response to the question: how long am I going to be dependent on subtitles? My response was, let's change it. Let's start focusing on mouth movements. And that has helped me a lot. Even today, I've said this many times on my videos, that I have never tried like proper shadowing. I never had to, I guess. But this thing was like focusing on the person's mouth movements to see what they're trying to say, and even to predict what they're about to say. You know what I'm saying? That has been a huge part of my journey, right? So consistency, listening to videos, listening to a particular kind of accent, because if you're listening to the American accent and you expect that you'll be able to understand like Scottish accent as well, like it somehow is going to be a byproduct, I didn't think so. I couldn't understand the British accent very well until like 3-4 years ago. You know what I'm saying? If somebody spoke to me in a proper, like, let's say, Birmingham accent, I would be all over the place. I would have like my brain would just break. So let's choose one accent that you want to understand first, and then you can go on to the others. Yes, if you start understanding the American accent very well, for example, understanding the British accent or the Australian accents is definitely going to be easier. You know what I'm saying? The first steps are difficult. The latter steps are slightly easier. That's the theory, and I accept it. I did that, started focusing on the person's mouth movements, and then I decided I was going to turn off the subtitles and see what happens, just to test myself, right? And obviously at start, it was hard for me because my eyes were so used to just going directly at the bottom of the video. My eyes would directly go there. And then I had to bring my sight to the eye line, right? This level. And look at the person's face. That was a difficult transition. I noticed all of these little details. My eyes would want to look down naturally, and I wanted it to look up at the person's face. I changed that, and sometimes I just listen to podcasts, just plugging my ears, so that wasn't a problem. That was one of the things that I started doing as well, because if you're constantly just watching videos and never just listening to them, you're probably not training your ears enough. You want that. After I started doing that, there were moments when I did not understand a word or phrase or even complete sentences that came out of the speaker's mouth. Obviously, because I was so dependent on subtitles. And sometimes, even if you understand an accent, even if you've been listening to this person for many years, you still miss some words, don't you? Yeah? Only turn on the subtitles at that time became my motto. Only turn on the subtitles when you know the reason for it. When you want to hear a word, when you missed something, only at that time. So I minimized the time by 100% to almost like a 20% or 15%. You know what I'm saying? All because I decided I was going to focus on the person's mouth movements, and that started helping me. And then I decided I'm going to shut the closed captions and see what happens, and turn them on only if I need to hear a word, something that I missed. In doing all of it, I just didn't realize that it got easier and easier with time. There's nothing else that you have to do. And if you want to get some cheat codes through the way, just make sure that you know that there is something called connected speech in the English language, right? There is this huge topic. It is an umbrella subject. It's not one thing. So elision is one of my favorite devices that native speakers usually use to perform connected speech. Elision for informal language would be gotta, I gotta go, sorta, kinda, right? And also merging other sounds in bigger phrases. For example, fish and chips. You're dropping the D in and you're saying fish and chips. Do you know what I mean? If you know about these things, you would have your expectations set right. Because if I say a sentence that has 7 words, for example, and you only hear 4 words, you would be confused and you would feel, I don't understand anything. What? Wasn't this sentence supposed to have 7 words and 7 separate sounds? Partly yes. Yes and no. 7 different words, but not 7 separate sounds. That is the rule that native speakers have. They're not going to pronounce each and every word clearly. And when I say native speakers, I mean the native speakers of all languages, not just the English language. When I speak Hindi, which is my first language, I would speak the same way. We don't realize it because we're not learning our native language. You know what I'm saying? Yeah? So recognize this thing. It is going to be easy with time. Just start listening to the accent that you want to understand. And once again, don't merge concepts. If you think you're going to listen to American English and be able to understand all other types of English or all other types of accents just instantly as a byproduct, that isn't exactly going to happen. So set your expectations right. Second, focus on the person's mouth movements and expressions. It's going to help you a lot. Even predict words and sentences. It happens to me now. Third, you've got to convince yourself to turn on the subtitles for now. And you would not be disallowed from turning them on, right? So turn them on only when you miss a word. Do that. Finally, know that native speakers use connected speech all the time. There's 2 concepts real quick. Some words are content words and some words are like function words, like grammatical words. Function words would mean words that are there in the sentence only to complete the grammar, right? And some words carry the meaning or the concept in the sentence. So people who do intonation right. Intonation, by the way, is the music in the language. You gotta go up and down with your pitch because not every word can be stressed equally, yeah? People who do intonation right would stress on the content words, words that carry meaning, and de-stress the function words, the words that are there just to complete the structure. And if you at least know this much and focus on some elision, for example, the informal contractions, the spoken contractions, you will be ready to hear the main part of the sentences that you're hearing. You would know what you're going for. And instead of focusing on every word that's coming out of the speaker's mind and basically just shredding your attention, you would know where to focus your attention to understand the full picture. Just grab the meaning. It's not going to be hard. All you have to do is begin, stay consistent, and even more importantly, please have fun because it is a fun process. Every time I think about it, right, my journey and look back at it, I have a smile on my face because the times were full of fun, even though I had challenges, but even those challenges were fun. And challenges are not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process, isn't it? But get started, stay consistent, and it is going to show you the results that you want.